Welcome to the budget project. I'm going to do a quick overview of the project, and then we're going to do the sales and collection budget together. So you have a client that wants a master budget. They want to know how much they need to borrow, if any, and they want to know if they can add a new product line. So they've given you their policies, and we've put that on in here in this tab. Right. So these are all the assumptions and the policies of your client that you will use to create the budget. So some of these are what they spend on salaries, for instance, what they spend on advertising, and that it goes up $50 a quarter. It's how much are they paying in dividends? What equipment are they expecting to purchase? All of these are relevant when you create a budget. We also have the bank's rules that you have to have at least $10,000 in your account at all times. That's to avoid certain service fees. When you borrow, you can't borrow down to the dollar. You have to borrow in $1,000 increments. The interest rate right now is 4%. That could change, but right now that's what it is. They've given you some details here about the required ending, the cushion they want, the safety stock they want to. They don't want to be completely out of stock in materials because the demand is forecasted, but it's not perfect vision into the future, so they want a little cushion. Here's their pattern of when they pay for materials they purchase, 30% in the quarter and the rest of it the quarter after the purchase. Okay, there you go. Here's the ingredients. They have 1 container per candle and 4 ounces of wax per candle, and here's the cost per container and the cost per ounce of wax. Okay, that's fine. Here's what they're paying for labor, $15 an hour, and they use 1/10 of an hour, however many minutes that is, to make a candle. So we've got their details. This is the cushion they want for finished goods. It's not the same as the cushion for materials. All right, so they can make a candle pretty quick, much quicker than they can get new supplies in to make a candle. So those policies are not identical, so heads up on that. Here's their forecasted sales in units and their forecasted sales price, and how much of it is paid in cash right away and how much of it is on credit. And so they'll be collecting that later in this ratio here. All right, so the beginning balance sheet tells us the starting amount in these various accounts that we will need when we start doing the budgets. We're going to be making all these schedules, and once we finish the schedules, we're going to be comprehending what's in the schedule and using them to provide advice to your client. We're going to let them know if they're going to be able to do the new product line, and if they're short, then they're going to be short. What ideas might you have that would get them there? So give them at least 2 ideas on how to get there. And then they want to know if they have a really big Christmas season, how much would cash and profit change? And they want to know why those 2 amounts did change the same. All right. You're going to write a memo to your client about those 2 issues. Use everyday language because your client doesn't know any of the accounting terms. They have no accounting training. So keep it clear, concise, and in everyday language. You have in your file here a sample memo that you can use or you can change. So you want to fill out the table for your client, and you want to fill in here your advice piece. Okay, so this is what a typical, nice, short, to the point client memo might look like. Here's your check figures for the original data, so you can be sure that you have created it correctly. And if you're not getting these numbers, get some help. Be sure that the kind of help you get is not just put 40,000 in that cell and everything will be great, but why 40,000? And how do I understand what's the why behind it, so that you not just get the spreadsheet correct, but you know the logic and the flow and how to comprehend these numbers. So wherever you get help, your SI, your professor, your classmate, be sure to ask them, but why? Keep the why in the question. Then you're going to change for the increase in December sales, and so here's your check figure to be sure that when you change that one cell over here, that your new numbers are correct, that means that you built your budget correctly and that one cell updates, everything's updating correctly. All right. So what we're going to do is link everything back to the original budgeted data. We're not going to have what's called hard coding. Okay, the sales budget is your sales in units times your sales price. Now notice what we're going to do. You can do plus or equals, and that tells Excel you're getting ready to give it a formula. Then we're going to click on the budget data. We're going to click into Q1 unit sales. You'll see the dancing dot show up, and then hit enter. What this did is link it to that cell. You didn't type in 300, that would be hard coding. If you type in 300 here and the client revises the unit sales to be something other than 300, your 300 won't update. If you click on that file on the data tab, anything on the data tab in yellow that changes, everything on your schedules will change. And I can put my cursor on this right corner and click and drag, it will copy over. And when it does that, it assumes that every time it copies, it should move one cell to the right. And that is correct. I started here, and I do want you to move one cell to the right. That's called relative reference. So that's working fine. Now let's do the sales price. I'm going to do either equal or plus, both work fine. Look over here and click on the sales price. When I'm content that I'm on the correct cell, I hit enter. Now for this one, if I drag it over, I get trash. I get something other than $25. Why is that? Because here I only want to continue to look at this cell. I don't want to look at the cell next to it and the cell next to it and the cell next to it like I did when I had unit cells. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this into an absolute reference by clicking within the formula bar here, and I'm hitting my F4 button. If you're working on a Mac, then you'll have to type those $ in yourself manually, which you can do. Just put a $ before the B and a $ before the 6. Now when you drag over, it will stay on B6 and stay on B6 and not move one cell to the right every time you copy. This one went from B5 to C5 to D5 to E5. It moved. That's called relative reference. So on the first one, we did want relative reference. On the second one, we didn't. All right, so now we're going to take the budgeted sales. So I'm going to do plus and point that and times the sales price. That will give me the total sales in dollars for each of the quarter. Now I'm going to go to the lower right-hand cell and drag over. You could, of course, just repeat that formula manually if you want. And then for the year, I'm going to go up here to the sum, and it will automatically try to find what I'm thinking about. In this case, it did it correctly. That is what I'm thinking about. So I'm going to click OK. And now I want this to still be 25. So I'm going to drag that over. And then I want that formula to continue, or you can manually write it out. So this should be the total units for the year times 25. And then if I want to check myself, I highlight these four and make sure that they do equal 43,750. And I can look down here at the bottom. Well, you can't see that. Let's see if I can get you to see that. There we go. If you look here at the bottom, you can see it tells you at the bottom in Excel what cells that are highlighted add up to. So there we go. Now I want to split out the total sales into the cash and the credit, because the credit sales are collected on a stagger, and I want to be able to budget that out. So cash sales are 20%, I think it said. So let's go over here and see what the policy was. Cash sales are 20% of total sales. So I'm going to click on that. Now in my formula, I'm going to have to click in the formula and hit the F4 to anchor that so that the percent continues to look at D7. Otherwise, when I copy it over, it's going to look at E7, F7, G7, and so forth. And of course, there's nothing over here. I need D7 if I want the percent of cash sales. So I have anchored that. All right, so that's 20% of this number, 20% of this number, and you can check yourself. It's just that here you don't want to type in the 20% because the client can change that amount. All right, and you want it to update all your schedules for any change that happens in the yellow cells here. All right, so you got two different ways you can do credit sales. You can do what we did before and do plus 7,500 times the percent on the tab, or you can take the difference. Total sales minus cash sales will be credit sales. Both are okay. I'm just not hard coding. Everything's formula driven so that I know that anything that's up, everything's tying back to the original data. All right, and I can add these up and get the total for the year. And this is a nice little check figure because these two here, when you add them up, they should equal, or else you got something goofy going on there. Great. Okay, so now the collections, what you sell and what you collect are not necessarily the same because some customers, you've given them more time to pay you. The credit people have been given more time. So cash collection is what's up there. We have already calculated that, and we can go over here and drag that over. We already know the cash sales, so they're already collected. But the credit sales, I'm going to have to split them out into what quarter I think I'm going to get them. So the first thing I know I'm going to get is last year's sales because it tells me on the beginning balance that all of that 5,000 is collected in the first quarter. All right, very good. Now, the first quarter credit sales. How much of this 6,000 am I going to get in the first quarter and how much of it is going to go in the second quarter? It's going to be split. How do I know? Because that's in the budget data. What is the split? 75% of credit sales come in the same quarter in which you had the sale, and 25% come in the next quarter. So let's be sure to not hard code. So, of the credit sales times 75% of that is coming in the quarter in which it was sold. And the rest, you can do it both ways. You can point to the 6,000 and go back to your beginning data and use your 25%. Or, if you like, you can do all the credit sales minus the stuff I have already collected. So whichever way pleases you, just don't type the number in. Have a live formula that will continue to update. All right, let's do quarter two. Of the 8,000, I'm going to click on the budget data, and I'm going to click on the 75% and then hit enter. So of the 8,000, I can either do 8,000 minus 6 over here, or if I want to continue the other way, I click on the 8,000 times, go to the budget data tab, the amount I'm going to get in the quarter after the sale, and hit enter. All right, so now we're going to do the credit sales for quarter three times, back to the original data, click on that, hit enter. There's your 75% of the 10,000. Now we want the rest, and you can do it either way as long as you're not typing them in, which is hard coding, and you don't want to do that because it won't update. Now, fourth quarter, interesting stuff. So of the 11,000, of course, we're going to get 75% of that. What about the rest of it? That's going to happen. It's going to be collected in first quarter of 2000X3. So that will be on our ending balance sheet as not yet collected at the end of this budgeted year. So that part, the remaining 25% of that, is going to be in accounts receivable. So there's your first two schedules of the master budget. And hopefully that gets you started and how to link these cells. All of these cells are linked. None of them have I typed in a number. I have pointed to something that originated back here. And so if the price changed, if any of the units changed, if any of these percents changed because the client has had a different pattern, when the client comes back and updates this, their budget will update. And budgets have lots of iterations. Let's finish the math here. So let's finish adding up all the quarters to get the total. And we can add all the quarters going up as a way to verify that all the math is lovely. it really wants me to autofill all the way down so that the 46,000 will show up beautifully. So there you go. So that's the end of this piece. And so give this a try, and then we'll come back and we'll have a new video to be able to work on production and materials and so forth.